Welcome back to Ask a Black Belt. This question that we received was, what is the best advice you have ever received in BJJ? And I feel like I have received many excellent advice over the years of training and with my professor and other mentors and people in jiu-jitsu that I looked up to. But I'm gonna go over two that really stuck with me. And one was from a jiu-jitsu professor that I look up to, and that's Alexander Crispin. And there was a point where I was going to his gym and training when I was like brown belt, and I was looking for extra training to get in to help me get better and strive for my black belt. And Crispin would go off on some lectures in the class, and one of the lectures that he talked about was, what kind of Caesar do you want to be? So what he meant by that was, what kind of leader do you want to be, right? Because when we are starting in jiu-jitsu or anything, sometimes we don't get to pick our leaders, right? We come into a gym and the professor's there, the coaches are there, and other students are there, and they are the leaders. Now we have a choice to change gyms if we don't like how things are going at one gym. We have that choice always. However, over time, you learn from many different instructors, and you see different styles. And then when you get your black belt, you have a choice now. You don't have to 100% follow in these people's footsteps. You can take bits and pieces of what you enjoy from this coach or that coach, or you can learn from that. You can say, you know what, I like how they did that here, and I'm gonna do this a little different. And so that really resonated with me because it realized, you know what, I have a choice, and what kind of leader do I want to be? We've all had, in jiu-jitsu or in work or in other sports, we've all had different leaders or different coaches or different teachers, or different bosses that we did not like the way that they were leading us. They were leading by fear, or they were manipulative, or whatever it was. We know the coach that we don't want to be. We know the professor that we don't want to be. We know the leader, and we know the person that we don't want to be through our experiences. So that's a great place to start. Hey, I don't want to be like this, so I need to embody these character traits. And that's the kind of leader that I want to be. It takes some introspective work, and it takes a lot of mistakes, Even myself as a professor, many times I realize, I didn't like how I did that, or I could have done that differently. I've oftentimes reflect on how I coach, and I have a gut feeling when I'm doing things that are in tune with my vision or in tune with my personal mission statement. And then I have times where I veer off and I feel remorse or guilt in the way that I acted or taught or led my students. And I need to then reflect and figure out how I can improve that and how I can be a better leader. And maybe sometimes that requires me to go and apologize to a person because of the way I treated them. So what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of mother, what kind of father, what kind of brother, what kind of cousin, what kind of mentor do you want to be to the next generation? Because that's our responsibility, in my opinion. Is once you get to a certain point, let's just say in jiu-jitsu, when you get to the black belt level, you have a responsibility to teach the people below you. That doesn't mean you have to own a dojo. That doesn't mean you have to teach classes, but you are now what people are looking to for answers, whether directly or indirectly, you know. So when people look at you as a black belt or a higher belt, are they seeing what you hope they see? Are they seeing someone who is, you know, humble? Are they seeing somebody who thinks of others, who helps those around them? So we all have a choice in our attitudes and how we carry ourselves and how we treat other human beings. And so you get to make that choice, and that is powerful. And that really stuck with me when he told me, what kind of Caesar do you want to be? What kind of black belt do you want to be when you have your students, or when you become that level of jiu-jitsu? How do you want to represent the art? And I was a brown belt at the time, and you know, I was on my way close to getting a black belt, and I really thought about that. It stuck with me, and I constantly, on a regular basis, go back and ask myself, am I? And the Caesar that I want to be always is changing, right? And I hope that it's changing for the better, for the good of jiu-jitsu and for those around me. And especially now that I have my own dojo, which is great because now I have 100% control, for the most part, on how I lead the students at my dojo. Of course, we don't always have 100% control, but I have maximal amount of control when you own your own business, and the coaches that you put on the staff, and the way that you structure your program, and the way that you treat people around you. So what kind of Caesar do you want to be? The other really great advice that I got from my professor, Ricardo Barros, that, man, really sticks with me all the time. And I say it to my students all the time. And when I tell them, I always quote my professor because I didn't come up with it. But we can only teach 20% of jiu-jitsu. The other 80% you have to learn on your own. And this can be very frustrating, I think, for students because, especially when they're new, I think they want all the answers. They want everything fed to them. They're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it's not that simple, because I cannot tell you what to do. I can only give you examples of what I've learned and what has worked for me, or what I've noticed worked for other people. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to apply these techniques and figure out what works for you, because the way that I do a collar choke from the back is not gonna be the way that you do a collar choke from the back. I can show you the fundamentals and the principles behind the techniques the best I can, but at the end of the day, there's gonna be many details that you're gonna have to figure out on your own, because I don't think like you do, and you don't think like I do. And we have different body types. We were raised differently. We have different culture, and all these things come into play when you're doing jiu-jitsu. So when you come to at least my gym, I do my best to teach, and with our fundamentals program, our blueprint, the blue belt program, I put together the curriculum that I feel is a solid foundation for students to understand as much of the fundamentals as possible. And of course, within those fundamentals, there's multiple details that you're gonna learn over years. You're gonna get a little bit now, and you're gonna get a little bit later. But and as you start learning the techniques over and over and over, you'll start seeing it in different ways, or maybe an instructor will explain it differently, or all of a sudden you have a light bulb moment and you're like, aha, that's why I have to grab it like this, So I've done that with techniques over the years, over and over and over, where I tell my kids in my kids class that I am still learning details on how to do an Americana, because you think you know it, and then it's a very simple technique, but then there's different ways to set it up, or there's slightly different applications on the leverage that you apply, and I'm still learning those things. But those things were not taught to me for the most part. The majority of those things I found over the years of experimenting. So I think I think that's a key word, is experimentation. When you tell somebody the other 80% of jiu-jitsu, you have to figure out on your own. This allows you to have freedom to explore. When you're training, things don't always have to go by the book or what you might think has to be a certain way. I'm gonna teach you an armbar. You know, the best way that I can explain what an armbar is so that you can understand it. But when you apply it during either the drilling or especially during the rolling time, when you're doing live sparring, the chances are you're gonna apply that armbar slightly different than the way I showed it. And that's the exploration aspect. That's where you have to, I tell my students often, like, when you make mistakes in training or you notice something where you made a mistake or you got tapped out or you got swept or somebody passed your guard or all these things that we would consider a mistake, make a mental note, make a physical note, right? Because when you realize the holes in the game, then you can explore that moment or that detail or that position much further. And you can then, when you come to the professor, like I always tell my students, ask me a specific question that's more specific as you can. So I notice when some students, when they come to me and they ask me a question, I can tell that they given it some thought. And I think when that happens, we can get to the bottom of the technique much quicker. We can get a much more thorough diagnosis on the issue with the position, right? So how you can learn the 80% on your own is by paying attention when training, noticing the holes in your game, making mental or physical notes on your phone or voice recorded or writing it down, and then reflecting on those positions and applying it again and again during sparring, or telling your partner, hey, I keep getting my guard pass from half guard when they turn their hips like this. Can you start like that? And so I can explore and see if I can find some answers. And then as you start exploring and as you start trying to make these corrections in your own game, there's going to be moments where you need some help, and that's when you can come to your professor, or you can come to me, or you can come to somebody else in the class that you look up to, and you can say, hey, I've been exploring this position, here's what I found, what do you think? When I get here, I get stuck. What would you do, right? And then you start to really explore these much more specific fine-tuning in your game. You know, I have students come to me and they'll be like, Coach, I always get my guard pass. What am I doing wrong? And then I'm just like stuck. I don't know how to answer that question. I could give you 1,000 answers on what you're doing wrong, right? But if you say, hey, the person keeps passing my guard to my right, they're passing around my guard, so they're not pressure passing, and they control my hips by using their body this way, and I just can't stop it. And then I can then show me, and I can figure out what answers I can give for you. So, but only those specific questions come from you doing the diligent self-examination and working on your own jiu-jitsu so that you can get better faster, ask better questions, and explore. Because jiu-jitsu is so much more about, you know, I like to think of my dojo as when people are here sparring or people are here enjoying the mat and training, it's almost like you're in the lab and you're trying new experiments and you're trying new things, you're asking questions. It's a place of learning. So your instructor can only give you 20%. The other 80%, you have to learn on your own. And that is two really good quotes from two old school professors that I truly look up to and admire, and that has stuck with me, and I have done my best to pass these ideas on to other students.